Now we move on to items B12 through B14. Um, the first item we need to go into. We had the public hearing. Let me just step you through uh, what I've proposed this evening. To maybe the goal is to get this done tonight. Our working group did a lot of heavy lifting, tremendous work, community outreach. And this evening, we're going to hear what they propose in the amendments. They've been sent to you earlier so you can review them. But we've got to work our way through a process. I need you to, I'm going to go through my proposed process from first is the time on the speakers, then the follow-up Q&A, all the way to our discussion. So if there's anything you want to reconsider or tweak, please open it up for discussion. But what we're doing here, we need a super majority because we are modifying our rules, our normal rules. So I'm going to go and lead through this. But again, this is good practice. We haven't done this before. New commissioners that haven't gone through alternative kind of discussion processes. This will be new and different, but if you can just bear with me, I'm going to go ahead and read this out for a while. And this was sent to you to your email address, but I'll go ahead and run through it. First of all, we have speakers. In interest of time, we have 7 speakers. I'm proposing 2 minutes each. The second item is our Q&A. In order to get through our amendments, I'm proposing that we just allow 3 commissioners 5 minutes each after we hear from the speakers. There will be chances to ask more questions in the process, and I'll go over that in a second. So next, we need to discuss our rules for discussion and debate. I am offering that we create the base motion as the staff recommendation for items B12, 13, and 14. That would be the base motion that we're going to be proposing amendments against. So next, we will start with the working group amendments. Some of you may have individual amendments that you came up with. We didn't get any submitted previous to the meeting, but as we go through discussion, you may have amendments, but those will follow the working discussion on the working group amendments. Okay, next, we need to propose the order, kind of the groupings, and how we will address the working group amendments. And I think I would like Commissioner Azar, you had proposed a certain, out of the 10 amendments that the working group came up with, a certain kind of packaging of those and an order. Do you want to briefly go through that so we can, all the commissioners are clear on the order at which we'll consider these or that you're proposing?
Sure, Chair. And do you want me to go over them in detail right now or just explain the process for it?
Just the process and by number, maybe which ones you intend to group together and the order in which you want to take them.
Thank you, Chair. So I do want to clarify that today, Mr. Rivera had sent the spreadsheet out. So if you look at it, there's a spreadsheet that he particularly created, and I want to thank him, that has both the staff comments on any of the amendments and the sort of group tracking with the tracking number. And what I did do is I did not change the proposed amendment tracking number just in case somebody had taken notes that they wanted to refer to. But essentially, if you look at that spreadsheet, what you will see is that the first is really looking at the 11th Street NCCD FAR and height, which have been combined. So looking at the entitlements and a corresponding map to understand them, that would form group number 1. Group number 2 is looking at the 12th Street NCCD height and FAR. So those are grouped together to consider at the same time. We then have a block on the use standards for both 11th and 12th Street. And really, the working group is proposing only one amendment to the uses. So that will be grouped together. We will have a separate one on the 12th Street NCCD liquor sales. And then lastly, there will be a grouping of looking at an amendment to the urban renewal revision plan and the single family exception. So some clarifications and language fixes that I think better reflect the intent behind the documents. So that is how it is, and that would create 5 groups that we would be taking a vote on, with of course amendments as presented in the middle.
Thank you. So do any commissioners have questions about the proposed order? Commissioner Cox?
I'm a little concerned, and of course this is coming from me, but I'm a little concerned about the limiting 3 commissioners at 5 minutes each for regular Q&A. You mentioned there was going to be an opportunity for more
Yes.
Q&A.
Yes. Yeah. Let me go and I'll mention that quickly. So when we go through each grouping of amendments, what I'm proposing is a 5 that will start out with a description of the amendment by the working group, and then we'll allow 5 commissioners 3 minutes each to ask questions of the speakers, the working group, staff, anyone, other commissioners. It's just open Q&A that will follow a description of each grouping of amendments. So we'll start out with someone from the working group will describe the group of amendments, and then we'll get 5 commissioners. We'll have 3 minutes each. Yes.
Hey, during that process, are commissioners allowed to ask questions of, well, I guess it says right here. So we're allowed to ask questions of staff and speakers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, Commissioner Mushthaler.
First, thank you to the working group for putting this together and the work that they did in that. But if anybody wanted to make changes, or as a commission we want to make changes after discussion, how does that fit into this?
Yes. So let me go ahead and jump down on the rules that I proposed that was submitted. After the Q&A, the 5 commissioners at 3 minutes each, then we begin, commissioners can make a motion, and it does not have to be exactly the motion as presented by the work group. After we have discussion, motions can be made that can be slightly different from what the working group proposed. But at that point, you have to, if it gains a second, we will then move into our normal rules. This is except that these amendments are already amendments. So what we're going to allow are amendments to these amendments. This is where it gets a little confusing. So the base motion is staff recommendation. The motion will be the first amendment, which there might be recognizing it'll probably be the working group amendments, but there could be slight changes to those that we are making as a motion. But then we can make amendments to that amendment. So where we do not allow that in our normal rules, we are allowing an amendment to amendment in this case, as well as substitute motions. So is everybody clear on that? I know that was the most confusing thing that I needed to explain for this process. Okay. So does that answer your question, Commissioner Mushthaler? Okay. So we will, at that point, let me make this clear also. Commissioners, as we always do, you have the option we can vote to split the question. If you feel like the groupings, once we get into discussion or even beforehand, we need to take these individually and not vote as a grouping or consider them as a group, we can consider these individually as well. So looking at this list, you can offer to split these up at this time once we agree on the process. that's always available to you to split the question or divide the question. So really quickly, going back to the kind of order, what I had proposed is if we get into individual amendments, if we have any, after we work through the working group amendments, that we would consider those kind of based on district, your district, starting with the mayor's appointees in District 1, District 2, and just go round robin until we finish all the individual amendments. I don't imagine we'll have a whole lot, but after we could have a few after we wrap up the working group amendments. So, questions on this process before we, I'm entertaining changes, if you have any. If not, we're going to go ahead and we need a supermajority all the way from the speaker time, changing our Q&A from 3 commissioners, 5 minutes each, and the discussion and debate as I outlined. Making sure everybody's, Commissioner Azar?
Chair, I'm just seconding your motion.
Okay, so I made the motion, a second by Commissioner Azar. Let's go ahead and vote on the, we need a supermajority to move forward. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. All right. So now, let me get my paperwork in front of me so I'm very clear here. We are going to have, we're going to work. Okay. So one thing I would like to just get is first is a quick overview, Commissioner Azar, of the process, just so we understand how you guys got here.
Thank you, Chair. So as folks know, the working group was formed of myself, Commissioner Conley, Commissioner Yanis Pulido, and Commissioner Praxis. And we worked through a process whereby we worked with a number of community groups. We had a listening session early on that was broad and open to anyone who would like to attend. And we heard a lot of feedback from there. We also had sort of separate conversations with the Austin Revitalization Authority that could not be at the meeting, the listening session itself. We also had conversations with Ocean because they were having their own neighborhood meeting and invited us to have that conversation. And I think part of this was commissioners having individual conversations with stakeholders as well. And so we really worked with a broad list of folks that were invited to this listening session with feedback from all the commissioners, the folks that we had already heard from via email or otherwise, and with feedback from staff and regarding to work with the other key stakeholders. So we went through that process of listening, and then the working group worked together to go through our amendments, pretty much reflecting a lot of what we had heard. And, you know, we got a lot of sort of feedback from staff in terms of the questions that we had. So I want to thank staff for that. And one of the things that I really want to clarify is that really pretty much we had almost unanimous approval for almost all of these amendments. So really we have the full backing of our working group, and I really want to highlight that. And I also just want to say, you know, I want to thank all of my other commissioners who were on here. I really want to thank Mr. Rivera, Ms. Keating, and Mr. Walters for helping us on the staff side to working on this, particularly setting up a listening session. And I definitely want to thank a lot of the community members and stakeholders that came out and had conversations with us and provided us feedback and really provided a lot of context that we needed for this work. And I thank all the other commissioners and the chair for giving us the delay and time that was needed to work on this. And I do want to say, I want to acknowledge the other 3 commissioners if they want to add something to that process.
Commissioner Yanis Pulido?
Yeah, I just want to echo Commissioner Sar's sentiments and also thank him in particular for coordinating, keeping our documents straight and serving as a liaison between our working group and staff, as well as responding to community as we all did the best we could. So appreciate that.
Anyone else before we get started with our speakers? Okay, so our first speaker is it Austin Feister? *6 to unmute, and you have 2 minutes.
This is Austin Feaster. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, once again, my name is Austin Feaster. I'm a landowner in the eastern edge of the 11th Street NCCD along Rosewood. I've been listening, and I understand there's been a lot of work, and the focus has been, from my impression, is on the boundary within Urban Renewal Board or Urban Renewal Plan's boundary lines. And my comments, I want to be clear, are not involved, or I'm making no comment on all the recommendations and the proposed amendments there. What's kind of, from my opinion, been left out on the observation and has not received the attention, even though it's getting some of the adjustments on the proposals, is what's beyond the Urban Renewal Board's boundary line. And I think it's probably, in my opinion, an incorrect process to use their public hearing process for what was going on within their boundary lines to decide the outcome on what's happening outside of their boundary lines, even though it's in the 11th Street NCCD. And with that, the Planning Commission's working group has mirrored the Urban Renewal Board's comments. And so I'm not making any comment on what's happening within those boundaries or the process that's happened for those. This is a very specific eastern edge of the 11th Street NCCD. And I think if the Planning Commission thinks changes deserve to be made there, it should follow a similar sort of open public process focused specifically on these as opposed to what's going on elsewhere. My recommendation, and I've sent a letter to the commissioners, my recommendation is, I hope fairly simple. If you want to follow staff's recommendation, it's the same, which is to just leave the sub-districts as they are there instead of creating new ones. And then the changes that are happening inside the Urban Renewal Board, I want to be clear. I want to be clear on the Urban Renewal Board changes. I'm trying to draw a demarcation. I'm not making any comment or trying to weigh in because that's been a process that's been focused on. And I want to reiterate, even at the listening session, as I wrote in my email, the Urban Renewal Board acknowledged, this had been outside of their purview, this small little area, and at the very eastern edge. With that, just to keep it short and sweet, I wanted y'all to hear, I think because it hasn't had that kind of process, if you want that, we should then take that as a separate project, but it's not fair if it hasn't had the analysis, rigor, and public input because it hasn't been a focus of conversation. I think it should be left out from any major changes in the sub-districts. Should remain as is. The one change was staff's recommendation that currently, the last I saw was they were suggesting specifically to adjust it to a restaurant general, they were a restaurant limited use. And I think it should be a restaurant general use because it would already create a non-conforming situation with the Rosewood restaurant right there already. I'll keep it very simple at that. And I'm not sure when you're going to get to the question and answer, but I'll stay on if others have questions for me.
Okay. I may have had a hard time hearing the buzzer on that, so I'll try to check the clock on time. But we have next speaker is Austin Berry, *6. And these, by the way, are listed in favor of the staff recommendations on these items, just so you guys know who we're hearing from now. And next is Austin Berry, *6 to unmute. Austin Berry?
Hi, this is Austin Berry. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
Hi. I appreciate everyone's time this evening, and I do understand a lot of work has gone into this. I am also a landowner on the eastern edge of Rosewood in the 11th Street NCCD area. And I echo the comments that Austin Feaster has made about how a lot of this process started with the URB and their boundaries, and I have no objections to the amendments that they are proposing within their boundaries. I just want to make the simple point that this far eastern edge was not included initially, and it seems to be the public input, and what's being proposed is a significant change to existing zoning and the subdistrict. And so I fully support staff recommendation to include and keep existing subdistricts where they are and not create the new subdistrict. And that's really all I have to put on this. So I appreciate everyone's time. I realize it's a very complicated issue with 2 plans and then urban renewal board. So I know a lot of work's got into this, and I've been following this, process, but just the working group, just to get to speed with it, I'm sure y'all work diligently with staff, but they also study that eastern edge, and we would not want to create non-conforming issues outside of the urban renewal board and keep that NCCD district as it was intended. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaking for is, I think it's Nyla Sankofa. Star 6 to unmute.
Chair, I don't believe I have Mr. Kofa on the line. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go ahead and speaking against, I have Zenobia Joseph. Star 6 to unmute.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I'm Zenobia Joseph. My comments are specifically related to B13. On page 1 of the document, it mentions that 23 people attended a remote meeting. I would like to know how many African Americans were present at the meeting. I would also call to your attention that there was a resolution passed by Council on March 4, 2021, item 67, and it actually specified, quote, the city's role in disenfranchising Black Austinites through past discrimination, urban renewal policies, and the 1928 Master Plan. And I just want you to recognize that we've been promised economic opportunities many times. And 80% area median income, just as a point of clarification, actually excludes African Americans. African Americans earn about $42,000. Hispanics earn about $50,000, and that's the U.S. Bureau statistics. And I just want you to understand that the area median income in 2020 for those that earned 80% was $54,700. So this workforce housing and the fact that the developers have paid a fee in lieu of building affordable housing downtown is something that should give you reason for pause. I would just call to your attention as well that the city manager has been asked by council to bring back something August 1st, 2021, as it relates to this Black embassy. And so while you say that there was a lot of outreach, I would just call to your attention that KAZI was readily available throughout this entire pandemic. And when they wanted us to know about Project Connect, the ad about equity played over 550 times. And I've not heard anything about what's being done on 11th and 12th Street. And I'm an engaged citizen. I looked at the April 6, 2021 African American Resource Advisory Commission, and they didn't even know what the rezoning was going to be. And last
Chair, you're muted.
Thank you. I think that was the 2 minutes allowable time, Mr. Joseph, based on my clock. So that's, we have speakers speaking neutrally. I have Nate Jones. You have 2 minutes, star 6. Unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, perfect.
All right, good evening. This is Nate Jones, president of the Organization of Central East Austin Neighborhoods. Thank you for your attention to reviewing the urban renewal plan for East 11th and 12th Streets, as well as their respective NCCDs. The Urban Renewal Board and staff brought you drafts that are aligned and much easier to use. They are a great improvement on the rather unwieldy documents put together in the 1990s. We did make a few suggestions to Commissioner Azar and his working group about how they might be further improved, and we hope you will support their recommendations. Other Ocean reps will get into the details with you. I'd like to share a little background and describe progress on the revitalization efforts so far to hopefully demonstrate the critical role these regulatory documents still have to play in the project area. So the Urban Renewal Plan was adopted in 1999 at the behest of area business and property owners and other members of the community. The intent of the project was to restore economic vitality to these streets and deliver a mix of desired uses that would serve the community's daily needs. The promise made was that this development would respect and enhance the existing context, meaning the built environment, historic structures, existing businesses, and adjacent neighborhoods, as well as the people who occupy them. To a significant degree, East 11th Street is largely built out with commercial, office, and retail and includes many restored historic assets. 2 large blocks owned by the Urban Renewal Agency remain to be disposed of in the near term. They represent a significant opportunity to build on progress and ensure all the quality of life and economic benefits happening on the street are accessible to and shared by the entire community. East 12th Street is twice as long as East 11th and has a somewhat different profile. There are blocks of single-family homes along the south side from the 1900s to the 1960s, project-based Section 8, and 15 new urban homes. There are a handful of historic structures, including the Bible Believers Church, the IQ Hurdle House, the old Eisenbeiser grocery store, and the Southgate Lewis House. And there are 2 new mixed-use projects completed, one on URA land and one by a longtime community member. We view these as valuable contributions to a street that is supposed to be a mix of retail, office, and housing.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think that's 2-minute time. Now we'll move on to Tracy Whitty. You have 2 minutes. Star 6 unmute.
Good evening, Commissioner. This is Tracy Woody, Secretary for the Organization of Central East Austin Neighborhoods. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Ocean urges you to support the drafts that the URB has signed off on, together with the changes recommended by your working group. Their amendments build on the great work that the URB has done to align the documents, streamline them for clarity of use, and carry forward a manifest connection between the vision for the area and its development controls. There are just a few places where the connection between vision and entitlements could be stronger. For example, unlimited FAR is permitted on East 12th and proposed for 11th. Unlimited building square footage serves no purpose for neighborhood scale development on either street. New 3 to 5 story mixed use projects on East 12th came in well under the 2-to-1 FAR permitted by their CS zoning. Unlimited FAR is unnecessary to achieve current maximum heights and sets expectations for something way out of scale in the future. Along I-35, it doubles down on the Orwellian concept from 1991 that 150 to 220 foot heights in East Austin belong in a neighborhood conservation combining district. That doesn't conserve anything. In negotiating the East 12th Street NCCD, we gave up compatibility requirements to allow new development closer to existing structures. In exchange, we gained use concessions on a street largely over Zone CS. Alcohol-related uses were not to be expanded because they compete with daily retail and commercial services we hope will be established. Only 2 lots of 41 are Zone CS1 and permit cocktail lounge. Packaged liquor sales are expressly prohibited by the current NCCD anywhere on the street. Making liquor sales conditional as proposed in the use chart may create confusion. The base zoning doesn't allow it and implies rezoning could happen, and that would set the street on a different trajectory than the one the community planned. We don't understand why urban renewal should facilitate bars and liquor stores. Likewise, we suggest hotel-motel be conditional to ensure this use doesn't dominate the street or enable enormous bars as accessory to a hotel on block-size development. Finally, we suggest the vision statement retain the notion that the plan be community-informed and successful revitalization is a mix that delivers on all of our values. This plan was adopted to address the needs of people, so we should be a part of the vision statement. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next we have Patrick Hauck. Star 6 to unmute, and you have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Patrick Houck. My family and I are 11-year homeowners and residents in the 1500 block of East 12th Street within the Urban Renewal and NCCD area. The past 2 years, I've served as the president of Keeling Neighborhood Association. My family and many of our 12th Street neighbors have repeatedly fielded proposals to sell to an interest amassing properties along and nearby the corridor and to name our price. So far, we have held out, but watched many neighbors give in to the inexplicably excessive offers because they were trapped with no real options but to abandon their homesteads. We are already under tremendous pressure to go, and none of us in any need of more. I urge you to ensure that the lower density residential uses currently permitted on nearly half of East 12th Street remain permitted, single-family duplex townhome. All of them are consistent with the urban renewal plan vision for the street that calls for a neighborhood-scaled mix of housing along with retail and office. Yet all of our homes are now to some degree called out to be prohibited under the revised documents for your consideration. Staff and their consultants propose prohibiting our residential uses. My understanding is that our homes contribute to the stability and placemaking of Central East Austin and this portion of the African American Cultural Heritage District. So I don't get why our uses should be disallowed along a two-lane street where they are common, persistent, occupied, and supportive of permitted uses that come in around us. What are we in the way of? All that said, there is a carve-out in the URP and NCCDs proposed to preserve owner ability to repair, expand, and replace existing single-family, duplex, and townhome structures, even as our uses are disallowed. We are listed in the Save Except section. Is the list of addresses in the documents exhaustive? How would an owner know if their property were missed from the list or even make sure it is on it? What notice would call their attention to this issue? Beyond the question of permitted or Save Except, I want you to know more about who lives along adjacent to East 12th and is potentially impacted by displacement pressures from disallowed uses or from our lack of care and crafting controls that promote the retention of existing housing stock. My 12th Street neighbors include a homeowner and resident for more than 60 years who follows development issues but does not believe there's a point to public communication to the city of Austin and will never reach out to tell you so many fascinating and relevant things. There are renters in affordable 1916 housing that will not find comparable affordable options anywhere in the vicinity if single-family house use is eliminated. And there's the Southgate Lewis House that serves as a historic repository for Black history thanks to W.H. Paston Society that occupies this landmark. That is the block I live on.
Okay, I think that's we're out of time there, Mr. Houck. So next, as we agreed to, I've got 3 slots for 3 commissioners with 5 minutes each to ask questions of the speakers or staff. Do you have questions? Commissioner Yanis Polito?
Yes, just since I know these are really extensive documents and the speakers didn't have a lot of time, so I just wanted to ask if there was a question about land on 12th Street, residence and vacancy. I don't know if it was which speaker it was that mentioned that. It might have been Nate. I'm sorry if
we cut off Nate Jones. I don't know if you're the one that brought up that point.
If there's another community member that can speak to that, that's fine. But I was trying to remember who it was.
Yeah, I'm here. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, all right, perfect. Yeah, so where I was cut off, I was saying how there are 2 new mixed-use projects completed, one on URA land and one by a longtime community member, and we view those as valuable contributions to the street, because the street is supposed to be a mix of retail, office, and housing that honors context, right? But there are also many blocks of vacant and underutilized lots as well as underutilized structures, and those are big question marks for the project and the community. So basically, the URP and NCCD as well as the Urban Renewal Board are much needed to guide whatever may be in store. So we ask that you please support the URB's documents and the recommendations made by Commissioners Azar, Conley, Yanis Polito, and Praxis. They represent over 2 years of review and deliberation done with commitment and goodwill. I just wanted to get that out there.
Thank you. I can give back my time for now to other commissioners' questions.
Okay, other commissioners with questions? All right. I am seeing none, so that moves us into Oh, Commissioner Azar, go ahead.
Chair, I just want to clarify by our method, this is also the time for commissioners to ask questions of staff. So I just want to point that out.
Yes, so this is open. This is not related to the grouping amendments specifically. This is just after we've completed our speakers, you can ask questions to staff related to any of these items. If you need some clarification, it's been a while since we heard from them. So we have time here for your questions of either the speakers or staff. So Commissioner Mushtaller.
I know one of the residents was talking about the single family homes. I'm trying to this is going to be a staff question because I'm trying to understand what's going on with that. And my understanding is that the single family would not be allowed except, I guess it's called a save and accept with the addresses for the ones that are in place. And so I guess this is for staff legal because I really would like to confirm that if we're moving this so that we don't allow SF, but it is existing, that those folks are protected with the save and accept policy in this. And that was for staff. I guess I don't know if we have legal or who can answer that.
Who do we have? Do we have from staff on these items?
Chair, Commissioner Liaison Rivera, so we have Mr. Mark Walters and Laura Keating.
Okay. Can one of you answer Commissioner Mushtaller's question?
This is Laura. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Yes. So we have spoken with legal about this issue. So the uses that are listed under save and accept, and for single family, they include existing single family homes in the area. Because it's save and accept, the uses can continue for as long as they want to on that address. They do not become non-conforming by the passage of this ordinance.
Okay, thank you. I guess and we're allowed to ask a question of our working group so we can understand the proposed amendments. Am I following correctly?
Well, I think we should wait. You can, but I think once we get into the amendments and they describe them, that would be the better time for those questions.
Okay, that's fine.
Commissioner Cox?
If Miss Joseph is still on the line, I think she was cut off because of the time limit with our speakers. And specifically, I'm curious if she has any particular suggestions of what she would like to see the Planning Commission adopt related to this item to help address our concerns if Ms. Joseph is still on the line.
Okay.
Ms. Joseph, if you'll select *6 and proceed.
Yes.
Okay, we can hear you.
This is. What is it that the commissioner wanted me to respond to?
I believe you were cut off with the time limit, but I was specifically interested in if you had any specific action that you would like the Planning Commission to take on this item to help address your concerns that you stated.
Yes, Commissioner. My concerns are mainly cultural preservation in the area near the Dedrick Hamilton House, so Block 16. I'm not sure what your limitations are as it relates to the cultural aspect of it, but I would just ask you to include that language somehow so that it's not overlooked. And then, obviously, the Florida area ratio with there being no restrictions, I just think that there needs to be some type of amendment so that there is a restriction, so you sort of address that as it relates to residential. I just think that the pattern that we've seen thus far it does not include African Americans because of our low wages. And so I think to some extent, if you could just address that and include some type of language or amendment that would consider the area median income and the cultural preservation, that would be helpful.
What was the name of that house again that you mentioned?
It's the Dedrick Hamilton House. It's the little lemon yellow house that's right next door to the African American Cultural and Heritage Facility. And so while there's language that talks about historic preservation, the little house doesn't even have a name on it. And that's a house that was, actually it's 5 generations, but it was eminent domain. It was taken from the Hamilton. So, I mean, that's just an example of, we say historic preservation, but right there in the area that you're considering tonight, it's just not really come to fruition. I mean, the house doesn't even have a name. It's just a little lemon yellow house. If you're following the area I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you.
It's really significant, but and I appreciate that. I just, from a culture, I engaged the process just for the backstory to be quick about it. The hotel occupancy taxes and visitor bureau and all of that, I engaged that process 7 months, and out of the process came the mayor's downtown puzzle. So even though we were trying to get some type of preservation for that area, it just didn't come to fruition that way. So if it can happen through the planning commission, that would be really helpful.
You also mentioned that the city manager was going to bring some sort of proposal back to council. Is that what you're talking about, or were you mentioning something different?
Well, the city manager is being asked to look at, it was item 67, and the city manager was actually being asked to return to council with a cultural space and to look at the assets in the central East Austin area. But as you know, the Urban Renewal Board, this is like the last 2 parcels that the city owns, and so it just would make sense that you'd give him at least until August 1st, 2021 to consider this area in the context of the rezoning that's taking place. I mean, the African American Cultural Heritage Center is right there on the site, and council has asked them to come back. And they've acknowledged that urban renewal has been detrimental to the Black community. So it would just seem premature if you move forward and council doesn't at least consider the rezoning that's about to take place. And so that would be my ask, is just to consider that he's supposed to come back by August 1st, 2021, after looking at the assets that the city owns in the central East Austin area. So, it's pretty significant.
Excellent.
And thank you for the question. I appreciate it. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the 3 questions, 5 minutes each. Now we're going to move into the groupings that we voted on, and I'm going to pull up a sheet here. So Commissioner Azar, based on the paperwork I have here, we have the first group is we're grouping amendments 1, 3, and 2 together. And I guess we're giving you, I'm not going to start the clock yet, but we're giving you 3 minutes to cover these. I don't think I was specific. It was 3 minutes per group or per item. So if you need a little more time, I think we can give it to you. But if we can keep the description of these, this grouping to 3 minutes, I'll let you, or members of the working group, I don't know how you guys want to tackle this, but who's going to present on this first group? Okay, Commissioner Azar.
Thank you, Chair. And I guess I'll start with the first group, and if the other commissioners, if there's anybody who wants to take a grouping, please go ahead. Otherwise, I'll keep on going. So just the first group, so there's 3 amendments that are part of this grouping. They all relate to the 11th Street NCCD. The first item, which is 1, is essentially a map of sub-districts. So you'll see that the sub-districts there are 1, 2, 3, and 4. The 4th sub-district was recommended by the Urban Renewal Board, but after a lot of discussion amongst our working group, we felt that there was a need to keep it as a separate sub-district, and the need was to reflect the other two amendments. So we would need to pass them together because this map would be required to actually refer back to for other two amendments. The second amendment, since this is substantive in nature, we're talking about the FAR limitations. So for subdistrict 1, we would go down to a FAR of 3:1. For subdistrict 2, we would go to a FAR of 2:1. For subdistrict 3, it would be 3.75:1, and this is based on existing FAR that exists on the current NCCD. And the other two would actually go up to the highest entitlement for those districts as well. And then subdistrict 4, which is the more essentially it goes into the neighborhood. It's part of Rosewood, and as it curls out of the 11th Street area. And for this area, we're saying that it would go back to its current base zoning FAR, except where it creates a non-conforming structure. Height is amendment number 2. So tracking number 2, the next amendment, if you look at it, and this again reflects back to the subdistrict map that we've presented. And this largely aligns with what staff had recommended, except for subdistrict 4, where we are taking the recommendation of the URB, again, with our own consideration, that we would take the heights back to actually their base as under current zoning today. And so what you'll see is what the staff had proposed was for subdistrict 3, which is along the highway, it would be bike tracked as it is today because it's kind of very specific there. For subdistrict 1, which is along the corridor, it would largely be 60 feet, except for in some places 30 feet where it truly is adjoining single family homes right at the back of them. And then in subdistrict 2, which is behind the main street itself, we would go down to the 40 feet, which again is staff recommendation. Where you'll see that the heights for subdistrict 4 are a little bit varying, but that's largely because that is based on the base requirement, the base allowance that is today. So I think I'll just stop there. And I would truly recommend that we take all three of these together because they reflect partially what we had heard very clearly, what we ourselves thought made sense with planning principles, and also relied on the URB proposal. But I think with a deep consideration by the working group that we think that made sense. So I really want to highlight that aspect. Thank you, Chair. Chair, you're muted.
Thank you. Didn't want you guys to hear the dog barking again. Let's see. So with that, we now have room for 5 commissioners with 3 minutes each, and you can ask questions to repeat speakers, staff, the working group, or other commissioners. So you can ask pretty much anyone. So let's go ahead. I'll be tracking these. Who wants the first question? Commissioner Shea.
So appreciate all the careful thought that's gone into all of this, especially the height. But I was looking at some of the comments that staff had made, and it talks about some of the proposals that we have are limiting against what they currently have, the entitlements that they currently have. So my concern is that considered a taking? And if staff can kind of talk to us about that, about us limiting further than what they have, and are we in jeopardy of causing a potential taking issue?
This is Laura, Housing and Planning. I can't speak to whether it is considered a taking, but currently the area that's denoted as Subdistrict 4 is actually in Subdistrict 1 and 2 in the current NCCD. The base zoning doesn't really inform the entitlement in the current NCCD, and so we are worried about there's a reduction in both site development standards and use allowances. A few of the speakers who were property owners in that area spoke to that before. And so that's just staff's concern, is that it's a reduction in entitlements. And because the base zoning varies in that area, it's a little different for each property.
That sounds like a potential take. I mean, we haven't, proved it yet, but I mean that, anytime, we go through and we start, taking away, landowners' rights from where they have, it's, my understanding is that it's a potential for that issue. And I don't know. And I don't know where Land Planning Commission can sit on that and potentially recommend something and then let legal sort it out. I'm not sure, but that is a concern that I have. And I don't know if legal can maybe chime in on that at a certain point. So that's my concern right now. So.
Do you have any further questions, Commissioner Shea, with your time?
I mean, I would like to hear from, I understand what staff is saying, but they basically just repeated what a taking is. But I'm hoping that maybe staff can let, the commission know what this means if they don't know what this means. But I was hoping legal could maybe chime in if we can even do this. But if I still have time, the other question I have then is because usually the NCCD mimics the Urban Renewal Board's recommendations, and at this point, if our recommendation is to the NCCD because the Urban Renewal Board has already made their changes, then my understanding is we're pretty limited on what we could tweak. Is that correct? Since we're so far down the line, is there anything that could be done for affordability? Like we looked at, we talked about our code and needing something for more affordability, maybe density bonus, but because this plan's been here for so many years, that tool isn't in here. And if we are going to be tweaking entitlements and, giving more entitlements, is there an opportunity that we could have done that? But if the Urban Renewal Board never gave that opportunity because they're kind of tweaking the knobs, then that leaves us with very few tools that we can even do. So
yeah,
maybe the working group can mention something about if that was an opportunity in there or not. But
okay, I think we're out of time. So let's 3 minutes. 5 and 3. I'm getting confused. Let's go ahead and that's the first question. Do we have a second commissioner with questions? Commissioner Azar?
Chair, I just want to make a quick comment for the benefit of all the commissioners. So I really want to highlight again that if you're looking at our different spreadsheets, I know we shared a lot. What Andrew had shared today, please look at that and you'll see that the last column has comments from staff on each of the amendments, and that is what Commissioner Shea is referring to. So I just really want to clarify that.
Yeah, thank you. I was remiss. Yes, please do. It had staff was clarified where they supported or did not support these amendments. Okay, second commissioner with questions. Commissioner Cox.
I fear my questions on this are going to be really, really dumb because I'm a little confused by this whole process. But and maybe this is a question for staff. So we're talking about setting heights either by tract or through this process. Does that prohibit in the future if we start setting tract heights at a certain height? Does that still allow property owners to come before us and request changes to that and request changes to this zoning? What exact limitations are we placing by setting these heights either by tract or through this amendment?
Commissioners, can you hear me? This is Mark Walters, Housing and Planning.
Yes.
Okay. In Subdistrict 4, what is called Subdistrict 4, that isn't tied to the Urban Renewal Plan. Texas Local Government Code says that Urban Renewal Plan supersedes local municipal land use regulation. But if I'm not mistaken, and Laura can correct me if I'm wrong, so for Subdistrict 4, they could come in and ask for amendments to the NCCD, and it wouldn't require any changes to the plan. If they did come in and someone came in and asked for changes that might affect the Urban Renewal Plan, as well as the NCCD, it may trigger an amendment to the NCCD and the Urban Renewal Plan. So nothing precludes them from coming back, but it does, particularly for those properties, most likely within sub-districts 1 and 2 on East 11th Street, that would add an added layer of risk and complexity to any zoning case above and beyond what normally exists.
Okay. And my next question, I think, is to really any commissioner in the working group that would like to speak to this. But I'm looking at staff's basis of recommendation, and the first thing they do is they quote one of the goals, which is to champion sustainable revitalization reflecting diversity, achieving equity, and preserving East Austin's cultural history. Whether it's these particular amendments or future amendments we might get to, does any of the working group commissioners want to speak to how their amendments help achieve that goal?
I can start off, but I also want to make space for the other commissioners. So I think reflecting on those items, I think there were a few things that we were considering. So one, we're still sticking to a lot of the recommendations that have been made by staff that really respond to walkability, like limiting, for example, hotel motel use on the first floor or limiting sort of other uses. So we're sort of maintaining the walkability aspect. We're also keeping the commercial aspect viable for both 11th and 12th Street. So a lot of those uses that are proposed remain. I think that is where I would say most of the walkability and commercial aspect is. In terms of the entitlements, I think our conversations were sort of twofold. I think one was, if you look at the 11th and 12th Street NCCD, we're keeping sort of the viability of the sites in check by providing those FAR levels, which are actually higher than what is in the current NCCD. So we're going from 2 at maximum to 3, 1 at maximum to 2 in the different sub-districts, except for that sub-district 4, where it will be variable. So I think, again, we're sort of responding to that, keeping the viability of the sites for developing what you would like to develop. But at the same time, I think our other consideration was, particularly for that sub-district 4, that if there is a change that is required for rezoning or something, then it really opens it up for a true community conversation. And so we're trying to maintain that community conversation with some of those sites to allow for equitable development that really responds to community needs and responds to how the space is evolving over time.
So,
and I guess the last...
Commissioner Azar, let's go. I'm letting it run. I was hoping I'd find a good break. Do I have a commissioner that wants to continue with this answer to this question? Commissioner Conley? Okay.
I'd like to start by just asking Commissioner Azar to finish what he was saying.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Conley. I guess I'll just quickly mention one last thing, which is to say that as you go through them, you'll see that we're making also changes to the vision statement to reflect those aspects. And then lastly, to really say that I think we're trying to live up to that aspect of allowing a different use of the site based on the existing uses, but also not expanding uses such as liquor sales, hotel, motel, which would not serve the immediately adjacent communities. So I think that is where we were doing a lot of our work on what would truly serve the adjacent communities, and that is where recommendations were coming from. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
The only thing I would add to that is that the NCCDs really in this area, it just really speaks to the way in which planning in this city is terribly uneven. There are parts of downtown where we're not willing to allow this kind of density, and yet here we are on 11th and 12th Street encouraging it, with things like unlimited FAR and so on and so forth. And I think we really should think about that, about the way the NCCD has created a very uneven patch of super intense development that we're trying to push in East Austin when we wouldn't encourage that in other parts of West Austin. I think as a frame of reference, it's worth thinking about a similar residential street somewhere in other parts of town. Would we ever even be having this conversation about allowing unlimited FAR? So it's just a question of uneven planning, and I think we're trying to address that by saying, is there a way that we can maybe slow down a process that's being just railroaded through in what is still a residential neighborhood that, as we heard on the phone, there are people in that neighborhood who have not spoken and who have not had an opportunity to engage, but maybe by doing this, we allow them an opportunity to participate in the process moving forward. That's all I have to say.
Okay, so I'm just keeping count here. Commissioner Yanis Polito, you're the fourth commissioner with questions.
Okay, well, I more wanted to respond to other commissioners' comments, but I'm happy to wait till there are more questions, and then I can chime in at the end.
Okay, well, let's go ahead. We have 5 commissioners, 3 minutes each. So the fourth, who wants to take the fourth spot? I would go ahead and use this time, Commissioner Yanis Polito.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to comment. I think I want to underscore what my fellow working group members have said. I think in response to Commissioner Cox's question, we were looking at the historical perspective of the impact of the NCCD on this area in terms of, to Commissioner Connolly's point, what we saw is somewhat inequitable application of really unlimited entitlements, and some of the suggestions to FAR, to my understanding, would not be considered, what we're proposing here wouldn't be considered a taking. It's not rendering land unusable. There is precedent to making some of these kinds of reductions in height or intensity of use in other areas of East Austin, and they've primarily been done with equity and more holistic, responsible community planning principles in mind. So that was the spirit of this. To my knowledge, it's not outside of our purview, and we had an opportunity to do this with a lot of, again, historical context coming in about how entitlements got proposed to be so great on some of these blocks.
Chair, can I use the rest of this slot to ask a quick question from staff?
Sure, proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Keating, can you help us understand? So if I look at the staff recommendations today, you're already decreasing current entitlements. So please explain to me if I understand this correctly. But in District 2, we're going from 60 to 50 feet down to 40. So we're decreasing entitlements by 10 to 20 feet within the staff's own recommendation. Am I correct in my understanding?
Yes. In Subdistrict 2, the height entitlements are also partially controlled by the urban renewal plan, so they aren't the same for the entirety of Subdistrict 2.
And I guess I would try to understand that within that context, was there any conversation around taking or otherwise, since that was indeed part of the base motion that staff and the URB had recommended?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear it clearly.
I'm sorry, I was just trying to see that within that sort of decrease in height in Subdistrict 2, was there any conversation among staff about taking as that was proposed?
About it being a taking?
Yes, I think a similar question to
discussion
essentially
around that.
what was posed to the working group amendment.
The adjustment in height, I think, was responding to the existing restrictions, the difference between the NCCD and the plan, and allowing for a step down from 11th Street.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And if I may, Commissioner, this is Mark Walters. The existing townhouses behind where the Street Jones building is, those are about 40 feet tall. So in limiting Subdistrict 2 to 40 feet, we were trying to create a consistent step back from 11th Street to those properties facing north on Juniper Street.
Thank you, Mr. Walters.
Okay. All right, so we're now at our last question on this grouping of amendments. Do we have a commissioner to take up the final spot? And someone that, if someone that hasn't asked a question, and if not, I'll allow somebody to jump in. But for those of you that have not asked a question, anyone want to take the last spot? Looking around. Okay, now commissioners that have already asked a question. I'm seeing Commissioner Cox, I believe. Oh, okay. Commissioner Howard, did you have your hand up? Okay. It's kind of going to be like an auction here. If I see your hand up, I'm going to call on you. Commissioner Cox, go ahead.
Yeah, I only want to ask this question if no one else has any more questions. And it kind of loops back to my first question to staff. So I think I heard a mention of potentially there's some sort of rezoning that's possibly being proposed for the lot that has the African American Cultural and Heritage Facility, and that is included in these new zoning entitlements restrictions that we're putting on this. So would that complicate anything related to securing a rezoning of that property if they wanted something different than what's being proposed with these amendments or with staff recommendations? And that's for staff.
We are not aware of any proposal to rezone that property. That property is adjacent to the Urban Renewal Agency owned property, and there's discussions about the sale of that property that are ongoing. Maybe that is what you're referencing.
So I'm just trying to understand if at some point in the near future they did want to rezone that property and what they wanted was somehow in conflict with these proposed NCCD changes or rules or amendments, would they be prohibited in any way seeking that rezoning? Or would they just go through the standard process, come to us, and we would evaluate it on a case-by-case basis?
Yes, they would go through the standard rezoning process, but they would also have to go through a change of the urban renewal plan because they are in that planning boundary. So they would start by going to the urban renewal board and then come to y'all.
And that's similar to like if you want to amend a neighborhood plan amendment or something like that.
Correct. It's just an extra step, and it's the process that these amendments are going through right now.
Okay.
In addition, the council. This is Mark Walters, Housing and Planning. The council resolution directing us to update the urban renewal plan and the NCCDs. One of the goals of it was also to help in the final disposition and sale of those two agency-owned properties on East 11th Street. So that was part of the council direction to the Urban Renewal Board and staff.
And Commissioner Czar, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, Commissioner Cox, if we're indeed referring to the African American Cultural and Heritage Facility that's at 912 East 11th, that's actually also zoned historical. So it's currently zoned as H. And I guess I would wonder if staff could clarify. I'm assuming that would actually impact any redevelopment because it's currently zoned as H with the H designation.
If it is currently zoned at H, then it has all those protections from that zoning as well.
All right, folks. So quick check. I want to make sure. I know this is kind of going through this very quickly. So before we get into the motions, do we feel like we have adequate Q&A time for you to understand these amendments? Because at this time, we could vote to extend the Q&A if needed, or change the amount of time we have for Q&A. I just want to make sure you all are comfortable with the process. I know I'm pushing really hard to get done, but at the same time, we need to understand what's happening here. So I just want to, are we good with what we have set out as far as the 5 commissioners with 5 commissioners for 3 minutes each. Is that adequate? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone advocating for changes. We have completed that part of this. Now we're entertaining motions again. We have the working group has asked us to consider these as a group, but we can need a commissioner that wants to motion for that or something that's in line with that as a starting point. So do I see a motion?
Chair, I will make a
Commissioner Azar?
motion.
Yes.
I will make a motion to accept the working group's recommendation for Group 1, which would be the 11th Street sub-district map, the 11th Street NC height, and 11th Street FAR.
Okay, do I have a second? Commissioner Conley, do you want to speak to your motion, Commissioner Azar?
Thank you, Chair. I think we've had such a robust conversation here, and I really appreciate some of the points that the other commissioners have brought up, particularly around entitlements. And I really want to clarify, I think that was something our working group really had quite an in-depth conversation on what seemed appropriate or not. And we had conversations with staff, and staff had been amazing at responding to some of our questions related to that. But I think I do want to clarify 2 things. One, I think we're sort of going with what was the original intent of both Urban Renewal Plan and the NCCD of really having sort of community supportive districts. And I think we're going back to that. And I think there was some sort of lost vision along the way. And so there's somewhat correcting that. And we're also supporting, I think, the community conversations that have happened around here. One other thing I'll quickly mention is also to say that, as we've heard, we're already decreasing height, even in the base motion that is staff's recommendation with Urban Renewal Board, there is a decrease in entitlement in sub-district 2. So I think that will certainly be a conversation moving forward with our law department and council to figure out how that is resolved. So I think at this point, I'm comfortable making this recommendation with the understanding that there will be continuing conversations as this moves forward.
Okay. Primary speaker against this motion? Second commissioner speaking for, you have 2 minutes. Anyone? Okay, any more for and against? Okay, so again, we have this.
Sorry, I'll speak against.
Okay. All right.
I guess I'm just, I find it frustrating that we as a city come up with a plan for how we want to grow, because we know we have to grow as a city, and we come up with things like Imagine Austin and say we want the growth on the corridors, and we want to have it slightly go in from the corridors and try to maintain sort of the neighborhoods, but to put the growth where we think it should go. And in this case, the response is kind of, well, maybe we're pushing too much. We don't know anywhere on the west side that we would allow a street like this to happen. But when we go to the west side, when we go to Burnett, we say, oh, well, we can't have 90 feet on Burnett because because our compatibility requirements aren't quite enough. And we can't have 90 feet on Lamar because, it's not walkable if we have 90 feet on Lamar. And we keep sort of addressing things to neighborhood concerns without ever getting back to, well, what about what the city's concern was? We have to grow, because if we don't grow and we're always pushing back on neighborhood concerns, we're growing anyway, and we're just growing out into the urban sprawl, and that just sort of destroys the environment, destroys the community, destroys makes the transportation, and makes these neighborhoods just more and more expensive and impossible to live. And so we end up not preserving the neighborhood, not preserving the people, not preserving even the character. And we preserve, as I've said before, the setback and the height limitations, because all the houses get knocked down and all the people get replaced. And it just doesn't seem the appropriate way forward. And we have to draw the line and just say, stop, it's one thing not to increase the entitlements, but another thing to scale them back. And I can't support that.
All right. So I'll open it up. Any speakers for this motion? I'm sorry, commissioners for this motion. Commissioner Conley?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think, when we talk about scaling back entitlements, we have to take that in the context of a situation where the entitlements being proposed are unlimited FAR, right? So, which is something that you could never scale back from, right? Once you've granted unlimited, there's no, you can't go forward. You can't. So it removes the possibility of ever having that conversation, but in a very uneven way. It's funny that I'm even in this position because I'm usually arguing for denser development in Austin, and I appreciate the need to grow and make more space for people. But at the same time, we need to do it in a way that's even and that's equitable. And so that's the problem with this model, where you have a little patch, a little NCCD over here that just grants massive entitlements. And then you have another little patch with an NCCD that just tries to block any entitlements. And you have this very uneven patchwork of different kinds of density in different parts of the city, which often reflect the same pattern that we saw in the 90s, where East Austin, Central East Austin, is always the desired development zone, right? Is always the place where we want to push all new density and development. So if we're going to have a conversation about denser growth and the need to grow and the need to go higher, then we need to have that conversation in an even way that it's comprehensive of the entire city, of the entire area surrounding the urban core, and that isn't just this one uneven patch where we're going to say, okay, crazy, wild, uncontrolled growth on 11th and 12th Street. And then we'll block it in other places, including parts of downtown. So I think that's the spirit of this, is to say we can't just do it in this way. We have to do it in a way that's comprehensive, that's equitable, and that really compensates, right, for entitlements that already exist in certain areas and entitlements that don't exist in other areas. So that's the spirit of, I think, what we're trying to get at.
I'm sorry. I got several messages there. Just remember, we got 2 minutes. Any speakers against this motion? Anybody else want to speak for? Commissioner Cox.
This might be more of a neutral comment, but one of the things that I haven't heard mentioned that I'm always really disappointed in is the consolidation of the ownership of land on our corridor. And what we see coming before us constantly, and Commissioner Thompson mentioned the massive apartment donut on Burnett and the massive proposed apartment donut on South Lamar that consolidated a bunch of property. I hate to see all of these smaller properties on these corridors get bought up by these massive developers who then turn them into big Texas donuts and then rent them out for exorbitant prices. And I see the benefit in the community character and the fabric of the community and having these smaller spaces that are more accessible to other owners or renters or whatever they may be. And I have to admit, I'm not very familiar with the East 11th and 12th corridors, but what I can see from it from my computer screen is we do have a lot of those spaces that are smaller, that are more community oriented, and I would hate to see this turn into every other corridor that I've seen develop in Austin, just a bunch of consolidation of property into massive Texas donuts sold as apartment complexes, which I think really, really removes a lot of the character that we value here in Austin, and especially in East Austin. And so I'm hoping that some of the changes, whether it's these amendments, the staff recommendations, or whatever, I hope that some of these amendments help preserve some of those smaller properties rather than the consolidation we've seen in all the other corridors through Austin. So I'll support this. I don't know if that's really a message of support, but I hope that accomplishes it.
So I might have missed your hand go up, Commissioner Yanez Polito, and you can take one of the slots if you wish. Did you want to speak?
I was going to speak for if there's still room. But
Go ahead. I'll let you take one of the against spots just because I did miss you. Sorry.
Oh no, I appreciate that, and I do think, a lot of the concerns raised are valid. I also am not seeing the empirical evidence that deregulated growth and unlimited density is solving the issues of displacement or doing anything to preserve culture or mixed income neighborhoods. So, you know, we've taken all those things into consideration, and I think it was important to us to look at the historical context, but also the physical context of the street. We're not talking about Burnett or Lamar. We're talking about small 2-lane roads that have been predominantly residential and mixed use, and have a decent amount of community engagement, including some voices that have seen the historical patterns of this document and unfortunately have watched their neighbors getting displaced. But we really did have a mix of longtime voices, of more recent voices, and we're hopeful that this is actually a foundational groundwork. This is a healthy balance of a lot of important referential points. There may be some more work to do around the historical piece, but this allows for more development along the way. Sorry.
Okay. So that concludes our commissioners speaking for and against. So we're going to go ahead and let me restate the motion that was made by Commissioner Azar, seconded by Commissioner Conley, which is to, I'm going to go by the numbers on our sheets here. This is the group 1, which is amendments of the working group, amendments 1, 3, and 2 that comprise group 1. And anyway, let's go ahead and see those that will vote in favor of this item, for this motion. Okay, I have 11 for, let me count real quick, leave them up. One. I have 11 and 1. Okay. And who am I missing? No, we're good. I can count. That's 13. Thank you. Okay, yes. Okay, so we have 11 voting in favor, 1 against, and 1 abstaining. All right, so that was a heavy lift. I appreciate you moving through that process. It's new for all of us. What I am going to, Vice Chair Hempel, can you take over just during the next group we're covering is the group 2, and help me out, Commissioner Azar. That is item Amendment 5 and 6. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So again, we're going to have a 3-minute introduction by the working group, and then we will go into Q&A. So I just need a quick break. Vice Chair Hempel, if you can just chair until I get back, I'll just be a few minutes.
Yep, go for it.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Commissioner Azar, are you speaking to this one?
I can continue unless any of the other commissioners want to take over. Okay, thank you. So moving on to the second grouping, we're moving to 12th Street. So this is a similar conversation to the one that we just had. Tracking number 5, the amendment number 5 essentially would change the heights within that district. I do want to say that the map that is there is not part of our recommendation. That is within the existing NCCD. So those sub-districts already exist. We're only changing the height in this amendment. So in sub-district 1, if you look at the map, we would go down to 60 feet. For sub-district 2, we would take up 35 feet. Except where it creates non-conforming structures, in which case the height would be 50 feet. And then sub-district 3 would be at 35 feet. So really the biggest change that we're having here is in sub-district 2, where we're going down to 35 feet. The number 6 is the FAR for the 12th Street. And that essentially is matching the FAR to the current base zoning entitlements in all of those sub-districts, 1, 2, 2A, and 3. So within all of those sub-districts, what we would be asking for is essentially that we go back to our existing current zoning FAR with the caveat that we're not asking to create non-conforming structures within those two districts. And I think that pretty much speaks to all of them, except for one thing that I want to add, which is to say that within this district, you have to remember that it is largely either undeveloped or residential today, and the existing heights are truly lower than 11th Street. So it's a little different than 12th Street, and our recommendations sort of mimic what is on ground today.
Thank you. All right, commissioners with questions? And I'm not seeing Commissioners Shea and Howard. I'm not sure if that's bandwidth or they're just not on. No questions? All right, are we, would somebody like to make a motion? Commissioner Czar.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I will go ahead and make a motion to accept the working group's amendments for grouping 2, which includes amendment number 5 and amendment number 6 on the 12th Street NCCD height and the 12th Street NCCD FAR.
Have I lost the opportunity to ask a question to Mr. Czar?
I can rescind my motion.
Sure.
I'm rescinding
Okay.
my motion.
Okay, yeah. Commissioner Cox.
Yeah, sorry about that. I actually just read staff response to Amendment 5, and I'm wondering, Commissioner Czar, if what your response is to the staff's comment about wanting to have more extensive outreach to the affected property owners where we do have a reduction in entitlement.
So again, I would open this up to the other working group members as well who can support me in this. But I think I will say that we did not necessarily reach out to individual property owners who might see a decrease in entitlements. For us, I think it was a similar conversation to the one that we just had, 11th Street NCCD, seeing that we were already kind of doing that in other parts of the 11th Street NCCD, and then also within our own recommendations for that NCCD as well. So I think our understanding was that can be part of an ongoing conversation. And again, I think if there's any legal questions, hopefully that is something that our law department and council can figure as this goes to them. But beyond that, I will say we did not do any extensive outreach to the specific property owners. And I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that.
No, the only thing I'll add is that we did have a listening session, and it was open to everyone. We tried our best to communicate with folks in the neighborhood, letting them know that they could provide input and feedback, but we didn't specifically reach out to the property owners on 12th Street, specifically to those property owners now.
Do y'all know how this was, and I know the working group's not really responsible for this, but do you know how this whole process was notified? Was it notified like a zoning change typically is to all these property owners that are within this district?
Since we're still in a Q&A, I will defer to staff on that one.
Okay, staff, can you answer that for us as far as how notifications were done in the process?
Sure. This is Mark Walters, Housing and Planning. Prior to April 20th of this year, we notified all property owners, businesses, anyone with an account or anyone who owned property within the two NCCDs and within 500 feet of the NCCDs, invited them to that informational meeting held on April 20th. And I don't recall the attendance number. Laura can remind me, but we did reach out to, like you would in a normal zoning case. So it was the normal, and I think there was 2,300 letters, invitations sent out to the community for that. Does that sound about right, Laura?
And if this was notified similar to a zoning case, does that mean that valid petition applies? And if so, have you received any signatures for valid petitions?
No. It was. I think the invitation. Again, Laura, if you can remind me, the invitation was just to that informational meeting. So it's just a meeting, and it's not a public hearing or anything. So there's no petition rights. But we were presenting the findings or the recommendations of the Urban Renewal Board So that's what the purpose of that meeting was. I think we had either 20 or 40 people. Again, I don't remember exactly the number.
So we're reducing entitlements and there's no petition rights associated with that?
No. There were no petition rights at the public meeting because it was just an informational meeting.
But is what we're doing
But yes,
now
there would be
subject to
petition.
rights?
There would be petition rights. Yes,
Okay.
a property owner could petition.
So just to clarify, and then I'll finish. If these property owners somehow discover for the first time that we are changing their entitlement, they could file a valid petition before this goes to final reading in council and require supermajority vote.
Yes, they could file a valid petition.
Okay.
If they understood exactly what was going on.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? Commissioner Maschtaler?
Commissioner Cox's questions kind of spurred me on this. So the people were notified for the April, and then somewhere in there we postponed because we needed more time to understand things and create our working group. Was there another opportunity? Were people notified again? Was there proper notification? Because now our working group has come in with different than what the staff was presenting in April. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. I'm not sure if I'm making sense. But we're changing things, and have we provided proper notice about what we're changing? Because that's changed from when we held the meetings in April.
That notice would actually occur at the city council because we notified for the original planning commission hearing. So any changes made by this body tonight would be included in any staff backup to city council sometime probably, hopefully soon. But they would receive notice just like they did for this original meeting.
Okay, thank you.
We have another question? Chair Shaw? Oh, no, Commissioner Azar?
Go ahead, Chair Shaw. I just wanted to make a.
I didn't have a question.
Oh, okay.
If I can just use the slot to say one quick thing, I think I'm realizing now that we made a slight error in the wording of this amendment. I just want to clarify that to folks. So when we're talking about sub-district 2 going down to 35 feet, we're talking about 2 and 2A. Currently, 2A is already proposed at 35 feet, and we're saying for sub-district 2, 2A, it would all go down to that 35 feet. So I just want to clarify that, and my motion will probably reflect that. And I'm sorry, I should say we're talking about cell G to G5. Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions? Got 2 spots left. Commissioner Yans-Boliva.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, this is in line with what Commissioner Azar had just said, but just a slight clarification. I believe 2A already has 35 feet, correct? And that was one of the instances where height was lowered previously.
This is Laura. So that is correct. So the current height, the current regulations, and then the Urban Renewal Board's proposal is that Subdistrict 1 is 60 feet, Subdistrict 2 is 50 feet, Subdistrict 2A and 3 are both 35 feet.
Thank you, Ms. Keating, for that clarification as well.
We have 1 spot for a question. All right, not seeing any. We go back to a motion. Is there a motion?
I'll go ahead and
Sure,
make the motion. My motion is to accept the working group's amendments in grouping 2, that is amendment number 5 and 6 on the 12th Street NCCD height and the 12th Street NCCD FAR, with a clarification that for the height, we're talking about 35 feet for both Subdistrict 2 and 2A, unless it creates a non-conforming structure.
Is there a second? Commissioner Mushdaller? All right, Commissioner Czar, would you like to speak to your motion?
I'll keep this quick. I think my comments would be very similar to what I said for the 11th Street NCCD, with the caveat that I think this street particularly required a lot of attention, and we spent some time on it, just knowing that its current nature is truly very residential, and there is actually very limited even commercial or office on here at this moment. Even though this does not take away that aspect, and we're not talking about creating non-conforming uses from what exists today, it felt like it made sense to make it more aligned with what is on the parcels adjoining these exact parcels. And I think that is why I'm proposing this, with the clear understanding again that if there are any questions about legality, those will be considered by our law department as this goes to council and by our council itself.
All right, Commissioner speaking against? Commissioner speaking for? Commissioner Mushdaller?
Sorry, was that me or was that somebody else?
Yeah, you.
Sorry, thank you. I I want to echo what some of the other commissioners have said about the character and nature of this area, because I know I used to go around this area a lot when I was way back when in college, in the neighborhood that I remember being there, and in giving that neighborhood some say in this. But on the owner side, on any developers that may be in and around this area, I feel more reassured knowing that the process is going to go back through council, and there will be the public notice and the opportunity for people to discuss, present, and make their comments. So I'm supporting what the working group has done here, and I believe that there will be the proper transparency and public input process that will open up for folks that may feel that they weren't quite involved or didn't have the opportunity to be involved in the working group sessions the way they wanted to.
Commissioner speaking against? Or neutral? All right. Chair Shaw, remind me how many spots we have. Is it 5, 6?
Oh, for speaking for and against?
Uh-huh.
It's 3 and 3.
Okay. We've got, and anyone speaking for Commissioner Yanis-Polito?
Oh, let's see what you're saying.
Thank you. I'll just briefly say that I do understand the concerns, and in fairness, we just voted 1111 on on a similar issue, and for 11th Street, a lot of these concerns these weren't raised. So I just wanted to note that we've taken these things into consideration, and petition rights are very important. And just for historical context, there was a valid petition over a decade ago, actually, in which some of the increased heights were protested, and that wasn't heeded by council, and historically often isn't heeded by council on this side of town. So I do feel that the working group, again, reached the best conclusion we could, and I'll be voting in support.
All right, one more spot. Speaking against or neutral? All right, it's time to vote on Commissioner Czar's motion. Commissioner Czar, would you mind repeating that for the record?
Sure. So my motion is moving ahead with the second grouping of the working group amendments, which includes amendment number 5 and 6, referring to the 12th Street NCCD height and FAR, with the clarification that we're suggesting a 35 feet height limit for subdistrict 2 and 2A, unless where it creates non-conforming structures.
Okay, all those in favor? 11. Those against? 2, 0. Okay. Chair Shaw, you taking back over?
Okay, there we go. Yes, thank you very much, Vice Chair. Okay, so I'm going to real quickly say that if we get into the for and against under a motion, if we're beyond really adding any, if we're just making commentary or speaking neutral, we may want to just call the question and move forward. If it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of opposition, just to maybe give us a chance of finishing tonight. So we don't have to fill all the spots. That's all I'm saying. You know, if it looks like we've had enough debate. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next grouping. This is Group 3, which is Working Group Amendments 4 and Amendment 7. If you want to go ahead and give us, somebody from the working group, give us an overview limited to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I think just going from here, I would say our most complex amendments are actually over. So hopefully we can move through this and finish this today. So we're looking at grouping number 3 with amendment number 4 and 7 in it. And these essentially relate to the use standards for both 11th and 12th Street. So we're looking at both of them. And what we're saying is in both of those districts that largely hotel motel should either be a prohibited use or it should be essentially a conditional use. And so for 11th Street specifically, as already suggested, Subdistrict 2 does not have Subdistrict 2 and 4 would not have any hotel or motel in them. So we would be creating a conditional use for hotel motel in Subdistrict 1. Same goes for the 12th Street NCCD, where we would create hotel motel as a conditional use in the entire district.
Okay, are you completed?
Oh, I forgot that this is not a motion, so I can actually speak to it right now. Sorry for that forgetting. So here, let me just speak to it quickly. I think the main issue here was that I think there was a concern around the liquor use associated with hotel motel. So I think that was the first aspect of why we were considering this as a conditional use, so it can truly go through a process whereby the community has a voice in the conversation. The other piece was, I think we heard very clearly that the hotel motel does not necessarily serve the immediate neighborhood itself. And so again, it made sense to have it as a conditional use with the caveat that this would create a conversation to move forward with it. And that is why we're talking about creating that as a conditional use in both of those areas, with the caveat that we're not trying to create a non-conforming use again. So as the hotel motels exist currently, they would remain and would not be considered a non-conforming use.
Okay, thank you. So we have 5 commissioners with 3 minutes each. We don't have to use it all, but who has the first question regarding these proposed amendments? All right. Oh, Commissioner Cox?
Sorry, Chair.
I almost got there.
I just want to make sure, does making the hotel motel use conditional also somehow restrict like bed and breakfast type stuff? Or is it just strictly what we consider hotel motel? I guess that's a question for staff.
Yes, bed and breakfast is its own use, so it would not be affected by this.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay, other commissioners with questions? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion? Commissioner Azar?
Thank you, Chair. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we move ahead with accepting the working group amendment for grouping number 3, which includes amendment number 4 and 7, as they relate to use standards for 11th and 12th Street and CCD. With the caveat that I think what we're trying to do, with the clear intention to staff that we're trying to create hotel motel as either a not permitted use or as a conditional use within both districts.
All right, do I have a second for this motion? Commissioner Conley Commissioner Azar, do you want to speak to your motion?
I think I've pretty much spoken to this already. I think all this to say that we're not restricting a use completely within the sub-districts, but we're trying to create it as conditional use. So it truly comes back and has a community conversation associated with it, because we heard clearly from the community that there are concerns with how the use might serve the adjoining neighbors, and also with the understanding that hotel motel currently has liquor use associated with it that is limited in nature, but is still associated with it and would be allowed. So allowing it as a conditional use would allow us to have further conversations about such projects as they come forward.
Okay.
Chair Shaw, this is Mark Walters. Before, I wanted to make a point, a procedural point, that when you go to make your final motion, we need to make sure that you're making these recommended changes or amendments that will be to the NCCDs and to any corresponding sections of the urban renewal plan, because they need to be in alignment. If not, we'll end up kind of back where we started from when we began this process of aligning the NCCDs with the urban renewal plan. So I just wanted to make sure that you get that before you guys vote on your final vote.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. So can I clarify or restate my motion, Chair?
Yes, restate it, and we'll just have to make sure that's the understanding of the body before we move forward. Go ahead.
So my restatement is that we're moving ahead with the grouping number 3 of the working group as proposed by the working group, that includes number 4 and number 7 amendments, which relate to the 11th Street NCCD, 12th Street NCCD use standards and the urban renewal plan, or other documents that might need to be adjusted to reflect this change, with the intention that we're trying to ensure that hotel motel is either a not permitted use or is a conditional use within both districts.
Right. Commissioner Conley, was that your understanding? Oh, Commissioner Yanis Polito, I'm sorry.
Can I offer a friendly amendment? Did we need to?
So hold on. There are no friendly amendments.
Oh,
We don't. Yeah. So you can make an amendment or a substitute motion.
Okay, my amendment was simply to add except for existing hotels. I believe we had at least one, maybe 2 in the area in case that needed to be stated.
So is that already part of it when you talk about that you would create a non-conforming use?
Yes, since I'm reading from my amendment sheet, then that would be included within that, but I appreciate the clarification.
No,
Okay.
I'll rescind my amendment in that case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm gonna, are there any additional commissioners that want to speak for and against? Okay, let's go ahead and vote on this one. Those in favor? Those in favor, let me see, 1, 2. That's unanimous on my count. Yeah, I've got 13, so that means we got everybody voting. That amendment, group of amendment passes, that motion passes 13-0. Okay, deep breath. We're moving along here. Okay, now we're moving on to the next grouping. Actually, this is amendment group 4, which is just one working group amendment, which is number 8. Commissioner Azar, you want to go ahead and lead us through this?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and that is indeed true. This is just a unique, so it's on its own. We're looking at grouping number 4, which is really amendment number 8. This refers to the 12th Street NCCD liquor sales. And so our recommendation was that liquor sales be prohibited except on sites where it does not create a non-conforming use. And what I would speak to this is, so currently within the 11th Street NCCD, as staff has proposed, it would be either prohibited use or not permitted use, or it would be a conditional use on the corridor itself. Looking at the 12th Street district, it felt there were 2 things that we were looking at the same time. I think one was understanding the current uses that exist there and seeing whether an expansion of liquor sales on the site made sense or not. And we felt that within the 12th Street district, that was not a reasonable use of expansion of liquor sales. The second piece of it was the understanding that actually there are a considerable number of sites currently on 12th Street that already allow liquor sales. So an expansion of that would not necessarily provide any benefit to the community because those uses currently exist. So our proposal was prohibiting further liquor sales on the 12th Street NCCD with the understanding that we're not asking for creating any non-conforming uses.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners with questions on this item? Commissioner Thompson?
Is this packaged liquor, or does this include cocktail for a restaurant?
So, Commissioner Thompson, my understanding would be that this would be sort of packaged liquor as separate from cocktail use. And I should clarify that a cocktail lounge is only permitted currently on maybe 2 sites within the district where currently cocktail lounge already exists. So I think staff can speak better to that. We're not allowing cocktail lounge in the entire district regardless.
But there's a difference between cocktail lounge and a Mexican restaurant that serves a margarita.
That is a good question, and I will ask staff to maybe clarify that.
So
well, I guess it's up to you. It's what is the motion? Is the motion to ban margaritas or to ban bottles of spirits?
I think the intention was definitely banning bottle of spirits, not necessarily margaritas within a restaurant. But I think, Ms. Keating, you were going to say something as well.
Yes, I was going to say liquor sales refers to package sale. A restaurant would still be able to serve liquor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that is definitely the intention of the working group.
Okay, good. That was a good question. Thank you. I had the same. Other commissioners? I'm not seeing any more questions. Do we have a motion? Commissioner Azar?
Thank you, Chair. I will make a motion that we move ahead with accepting the amendment grouping number 4, which is really amendment number 8 related to 12th Street NCCD liquor sales as it relates to both an amendment to the NCCD and the urban renewal plan or other documents that may limit this use.
Okay, I'm sorry. Seconded by Commissioner Mushthaler. And speak to your motion, please, Commissioner Azar.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just make this quick. I think, again, the intention really is that considering sort of the nature of the site that we limit packaged liquor and do not expand it because it is currently allowed in certain places on this within this district. So I think our idea is, again, not to create non-conforming uses, to only impact packaged liquor. So we would still be talking about restaurants serving liquor as would be required with their own permits. And I think with the understanding that this only relates to the 12th Street NCCD, but also impacts the urban renewal plan or other documents that this might impact, as Mr. Walters had clarified.
Okay. Any commissioners speaking against? All right, let's go ahead and move forward with the vote. Those in favor? So I have 12, okay, that's 13 in favor, so that's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I can find my list. Got too much paperwork here. Let's see, we have group 5, which is items 9, working group amendments 9 and 10. That's the last package, right, Commissioner Azar? Oh, my God. We're doing really well. Thank you. All right, go ahead and speak to that group.
Thank you, Chair. So we're looking at the group number 5, which includes amendment number 9 and 10. Also, and again, these are, I think, essentially not largely substantive changes, and that's why they were grouped together. For number 9, it is our recommendation to amend the urban renewal plan with the language change that you can see in the cell. So this has a language change that we would be voting on directly, which would essentially say that we champion community-informed, sustainable revitalization through compatible mixed-use development. that reflects diversity, achieves equity, and preserves East Austin's cultural history. I should say, I think we're largely keeping it as is in this case, as had been brought forth to us from the Urban Renewal Board. We're adding two pieces to it that were specific requests of community members and the adjoining neighborhoods. Want to have community informed in there as an underlined sort of text. You can see that. And through compatible mixed-use development. And again, that's something you can see as underlined. So we're proposing this text with the understanding that we appreciate the work that the Urban Renewal Board had put forth. And I think we were hearing a few additions to that from the community. And so we're respecting that and putting that in here. Amendment number 10, and I'll have a question about this from staff in a second, if I get the opportunity. But really what we're asking for is a clarification and ensuring that indeed where currently single-family homes exist, that they continue to exist as an allowed use, and also that if they are damaged or destroyed in any way, the property owner can rebuild it as single-family, and ensuring that homeowners have the right in perpetuity to use and improve their properties with no limits on value of improvement, repair, rebuild, or sale. And the idea really was, I think we heard a lot of concern from committee members that would the save and accept part actually allow them to keep their homes as is. And I think we wanted to ensure that that was indeed the intention of staff as we understood, and we wanted to make sure that that is indeed clarified and we really ensure it within our documents.
Okay, questions? Commissioner Johnson?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
Does it allow someone to bulldoze a house and rebuild? And how do you define that?
So Commissioner Thompson, I would love to hear from staff on this, considering that I think that was their intention as well. But I would love to hear from Ms. Keating, and then I can respond what our intention was.
Yes, the save and accept provision allows permits that use at the address that is called out in perpetuity. So you would be able to rebuild and wouldn't have to worry about any of the non-conforming regulations.
But you can bulldoze an existing house, habitable house, and rebuild.
Yes, I believe that's how it works. The use is just permitted on the site.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to go to Commissioner Schneider first.
I guess I'm a little confused by the language, or at least the description in the proposed amendment for amendment number 10. The last line, ensure that homeowners have the right in perpetuity to use and improve their properties with no limits on value of improvement, repair, rebuild, or sale. That seems a little different than what staff just described. Is the idea that it continues to be limited within the framework of a single-family house, or because the language says that there's no limits on the value of improvement, repair, rebuild, or sale? So I was just wondering if you could clarify that a bit more.
Now I'll try my best to do this, and I think some of the other commissioners who had worked on this, maybe they can chip in as well. So currently we're eliminating a single-family residential as an allowed use in 11th or 12th Street district. So it would completely become not allowed. It's a not permitted use or a prohibited use. And so what we're trying to say is there's a save and accept section that staff has proposed that essentially says where there's an existing structure today, the owner of that property can continue to enjoy that use, and what we're trying to say is any new owner should continue to enjoy that use as a single family. If there's a need to repair, that should be allowed. If there's a need to completely tear down the structure and rebuild it new as a single family home, that should be allowed. So essentially we're trying to keep the single family use in perpetuity for tracts where it currently exists today, so that not only do they not become non-conforming uses, at this time, they never become non-conforming uses unless there is action taken in the future. And I wonder if other commissioners want to add to that.
Let me just ask a clarifying question for others as well. So essentially what you're saying is for any property owner that wants to maintain it as a single family residence, they can repair, they can rebuild as a single family residence, but they would also be permitted to sell it or develop themselves to whatever the new designation is under the plan.
So
They're not required to maintain it as a single family residence. They can also develop it.
And so I think not understanding sort of the technicality of the save and accept, I wonder if Ms. Keating, you can speak to that. My understanding is that they would be required to keep it as a single family use because that would be what their lot allows, but I would love to hear from Ms. Keating.
So is the question whether they can have another use other than single family on the property?
Yes, I think that is my understanding of the question.
That's more or less the question, whether this just permits them to maintain a single family residence, but also allows them to redevelop to the extent allowed under the new zoning.
They would be allowed to have the property under whatever use is allowed through the zoning. The single family which isn't allowed in the zoning, is an additional use that's allowed on that property.
Thank you. I understand that.
All right. We're out of time for that question. Additional questions from commissioners? Well, I'm a little confused about this too. Do we need to add, do commissioners think we need to add any clarifying statements to that last sentence where it says with no limits, to frame it as, under single family zoning, or just so it's clear? Was that the intent, Commissioner Azar?
That was certainly the intent, but I guess also to clarify that we're not saying that other uses that are allowed under the sub-districts would not be allowed to the folks here. So they could change it, but if they wanted to keep it as a single family, it should never become a non-conforming use. I don't know if I fully or clearly answered your question, but essentially trying to say that yes, the idea here is what we're trying to say, and the save and accept would be exactly what you're saying, which is with no limits on value of improvement, repair, rebuild, or sale as currently associated with a single family use.
Okay, I would just offer an amendment to include that language, include the language at the end. So it would read, ensure that homeowners have the right in perpetuity to use and improve their properties with no limits on value of improvement, repair, rebuild, or sale as associated with a single family use. So do I have a second for that clarifying? I ask Giannis Polito.
Chair, I'm sorry, did we make a motion yet? I might be confused.
Oh, did we make a motion? I thought no, we're in questions. You're steering me. It's getting late. I apologize. Okay, we have no motion yet, so we are free and clear to bring that forward at the right time. So,
and I will just clarify that anyone who makes that motion, including me, we will ensure that that language is added.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Cox?
Question for staff, because their staff comment on this was that they believe this is redundant to the save and accept provisions. And I actually really appreciate the explanation that this amendment is trying to provide, because save and accept doesn't really mean anything to me. I don't know what that means. So if staff could provide some explanation, maybe the legal definition or whatever, of what save and accept means in the provisions in the URP and NCCD.
Save and accept designate permits of use at certain addresses, and it becomes before the land use table. So the land use table applies generally, and save and accept says these specific addresses also are permitting these uses. So, staff looked at existing single-family homes and they called them out by address to allow them to be permitted at that site in perpetuity.
Does that
Yeah,
save and accept clause also mean that they can rebuild their house under the whatever the limits are of that particular zoning category?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a way to recognize existing uses and then and not make them non-conforming, even though they may not be prohibited elsewhere along the corridors.
Okay.
Commissioner Praxis?
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that we had this same kind of conversation with community members present, and at the end of the meeting, they still didn't really feel satisfied that their concerns were addressed. And one of the reasons for that is that the list of addresses in the save and accept section, they felt that that might not be inclusive of all of the currently existing single-family homes. And that was brought up a few different times. So I think our intention in laying this out is to ensure that any addresses that might have not been included are not, in any kind of risk of losing that right.
Okay. Any other commissioners with questions? Commissioner Azar?
Sure, I'll only go if other commissioners don't have questions. I can wait till the last.
Okay. I don't see any if you want to go ahead and take the last spot.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Keating, I just want to clarify, just to hear from you sort of clearly, I think what I'm hearing is that whatever our language is within this amendment is already covered within the save and accept provision provided by staff. Is that correct?
That is correct. And staff would be happy before we go to City Council to re-review that list of addresses to make sure that, existing homes have been left out.
Thank you. And my follow-up to that would be, would it be okay for us to sort of go ahead and make this redundant amendment? So it would be redundant because it looks like substantially it's captured, but it would truly, I think, make our community members feel more comfortable and safe with their current use. Would that be okay with staff if we went ahead and made it regardless?
Is the amendment to add additional language outside of the save and accept provision?
No, so this amendment does not include any language per se. So if you see the sort of columns on language, there's no specific language associated with this, but rather I think we're sort of, our proposed amendment language really reflects the intent of the working group.
Okay, yes, that makes sense.
Okay. Now we are done with questions, trying to keep this all straight. So do we have a motion? Commissioner Azar?
Thank you, Chair. I'll make a motion that we go ahead and accept the working group amendments for group amendment number 5, which includes amendment number 9 and 10. 9 associated with a change in the urban renewal plan vision with the proposed text as is within the amendment. And then we would include number 10 as an intention for staff to consider as they move forward, with the addition in the end of saying in that last sentence, ensure that homeowners have the right in perpetuity to use and improve their properties with no limits on value of improvement, repair, rebuild, or sale as associated with a single family use currently.
Okay. Commissioner Cox seconds that item. Do you need to speak to your motion, Commissioner Azar?
I'll just make a quick thing to this. I think the first one, I think we're not trying to circumvent the Urban Renewal Board's sort of recommendation. We're just adding to it based on some of the feedback that we had heard. And on number 10, again, I think really it is clarifying an intention that staff already had, and we're just trying to make sure that community members feel more comfortable with it, although it seems like staff has already covered this, and I appreciate their work on this.
Okay. Any of those, I'm going to push this through. Anybody want to speak for or against? All right, let's go ahead and take a vote. Those in favor?
Commissioner Mushtala had to log off. She had to attend to an emergency.
Okay, so that passes 12-0. So we need to do a final wrap up here. If you can just bear with me, and I'm going to go through this. So to kind of formalize what we've just done, and I remember doing this for the Land Commission, when we moved through all the amendments, we have to do a final kind of wrap up vote. So what we're doing is we're going to take a final motion and vote where the base motion was the staff recommendation on items, get this straight here, items B12, B13, and 14 with the amendments as voted and approved by the commission. And so if I can get a motion on the base motion and the amendments that we have passed, is this making sense?
Chair, I think we already had the base motion open, or am I wrong?
Chair, Commissioner Liaison Anvera, so if we can remember who are the first persons who made the base motion, and then just move to a vote.
And my understanding that was Chair Shaw, you were the base motion maker, and I was the second on that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that was right, we did that up front. So base motion by Chair Shaw, seconded by Commissioner Azar. And then, so it's a base motion with the amendments as approved by the commission. And then, so go ahead and get I'm really confusing myself here. So we need a motion and
just
then
a
a
vote.
second.
Chair, just a vote.
Oh, just bring it to a vote. Okay. All right. So this is, if we can go ahead and see those voting in favor.
Chair, can I make a quick, comment on this? I'm just going to say thank you to all the commissioners for, I think, supporting the amendments that came forward. And I really appreciate staff, particularly Ms. Keating, Mr. Walters, Mr. Rivera, for helping us get through this. I want to thank the other commissioners, Commissioner Conley, Commissioner Praxis, Commissioner Yanis Belida, and all of the community members. And I also want to thank you, Chair Shaw, for really setting out a process for this that helped us get through them. Thank you all.
Yeah, appreciate it. And I'll say a few remarks after we get through the vote too. Just so let's go ahead and see those in favor. All right, that's 12-0. Thank you very much. Yeah, I want to thank you, the working group. Tremendous job. And I like the way we worked through this very kind of first time kind of revision to our procedures. And when we get, I think the next one we'll have to address is the transportation criteria manual. So we'll try to introduce similar type rules. So be thinking about how we can do it better next time. If we are running short of time, if we are just rushing things, need to take couple of meetings to knock things out. I'm truly impressed that we got done with this evening before 10. I'm actually, when Andrew and I were adding up the time, it was like, no way. Well, and Vice Chair, we're like, this is going to take 2 meetings. So appreciate you accommodating this very kind of abbreviated format, but we did get through it. Congratulations. And now we're going to see if we can get through the rest of the agenda. Let me get reoriented here. Give me 1 second. I've got paperwork everywhere. Yeah, and I'm missing something. Give me 1 second. Here it is. Okay. All right. So let's, we've got, C1, and I'm going to go ahead and do we need to extend just for a short time? I think we're gonna, looking at this item, we may need just a few more minutes. Commissioner Cox, what are you proposing?
Extend to 10:20.
10:20, do I have a second? Commissioner Azar? Okay, that's 11, 12. I think I'm seeing 12 and okay. It's unanimous. Looks all green. Thank you.